You're listening to The Mark Cox Show. Find everything Mark Cox at 971talk.com/Cox.
Direction. House Majority Whip Steve Scalise is still in critical condition after he was shot in the hip by a gunman targeting GOP lawmakers, but we're told he is doing slightly better. Doctors say he underwent a second surgery related to his internal injuries and a broken bone in his leg, but he still needs more surgery.
Welcome back into the Mark Cox Show. We're joined right now by Catherine Herridge, investigative reporter for the Fox News Channel. Catherine, I know that you've been following this story and the investigation into the shooter who happened to be from the greater St. Louis area. What's new with this?
I think the most important development is twofold, actually. The FBI confirms that they have finished the trace on the two weapons that were found with the shooter, James Hodgkinson. One was a 9mm handgun. The other was a rifle. And all of the records show that they were purchased legally and that he had a valid license. The second thing is that when they did a search of his van, your listeners will remember that he was living out of his van at the Y, which was across the street from the ballpark where the shooting happened. When they went through the van, they found a computer and they found a phone, and then they also found a camera. And based on our reporting, they seem very optimistic that between those three devices, they have a very good electronic trail to help them piece together the motive.
In terms of the weapons, did they say where they were purchased? We've had some local reporting here from the Belleville News Democrat saying that he had a valid firearm owner's ID card in Illinois. Were they bought here? Were they bought in Virginia?
So they have not said here in Washington. They've confirmed that they believe they were bought lawfully. My experience is that they tend not to want to reveal where the weapons were purchased because then the seller becomes inundated, right, with reporters. And if it's a valid sale, I'm not sure what greater good that serves.
Yeah, that's probably true. I did talk to the owner of one of the gun stores over in Belleville, and he said he wasn't a customer of mine. So the investigation moves forward. They still are working under the theory that he was alone, right?
That's correct. They're moving across multiple fronts. But by late yesterday, they still were telling us that everything they've seen tells them so far that he was acting on his own. The thing that we don't know, but I'm sure investigators have a pretty good handle on based on the review of the phone and the computer and now this camera, is the level of premeditation. Was it something that he had been gearing up for, or was it very opportunistic? He had been thinking about it, or he had a lot of rage, and then when he approached someone and asked them who was playing, he decided that he would attack the lawmakers that day. We still don't know that, and what sort of jumps out at me is that they believe he's been in the Washington area since the end of March. As you know from the local reporting, there was an incident late March. I think it was around the 24th. Where he was shooting in the backyard of his property, and this alarmed one of the neighbors because the houses are not too far apart, and he was shooting into the woods, which sounds to me like it sort of intersected the properties, like a
right.
And he sort of yelled at him to stop. He didn't think he heard him, and the police came in, and the sheriff explained to him, "Look, you really can't be shooting here. There's a lot of risk, right? There's a lot of people, a lot of kids." And then he stopped, but it's shortly after that he then came to the Washington area.
And his wife seemed completely clueless yesterday as to where he had been or what he'd been up to the last
Well, that's what she said at this sort of impromptu news conference.
Yeah.
She said that she thought he had gone to Washington to work on tax policy. And if I know your listeners have been following this pretty closely, this was one of the things that he had railed against in his social media posts, and then also at an Occupy demonstration. I want to say a protest that was in St. Louis back in 2011. So this is a political theme of interest to him. I'm not saying that that's what led to it, but it's a consistent theme from what we know over the last 6 years. I don't know how much contact she had to him with him once he came to the Washington area, or what sort of has my attention is that you have this event at the end of March that gets a lot of focus on him from the neighbors and then also from the police. And it's at that time that he leaves and comes to Washington. So something happened there. It looks to me, and I'm sure his wife can really fill in some of the details for the FBI, who, as I understand it, have been on the scene since earlier this week.
Do you have time for one final question?
Yeah, sure.
We got an update earlier on the condition of Steve Scalise. Do you have any more insight on that?
Well, we're expecting a news conference later today, and I mean he's in tough shape. I don't know what other term to use. He's had at least 2, maybe 3 surgeries now, and those are heart surgeries, abdominal surgeries. These are very hard surgeries even when you're a healthy person, let alone somebody who had a lot of blood loss and from everything we've seen and heard was in shock. So people need to keep praying for him, if you don't mind me saying that.
No.
I mean, he's shown some sort of slow incremental improvement, but when you go into shock, I mean that's what it really means. It's a shock for your entire system, and that's hard, as I said, for a healthy person to really deal with, let alone someone who's had that much trauma. But he's here and he's fighting, and that's the important thing.
That's right. It's a great point. Catherine Herridge, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Catherine Herridge from the Fox News Channel. Always welcome the opportunity to get her on the air, and because she has such great sources and all that. You know how I feel about Catherine's reporting, but yeah, the truth will eventually come out as to the extent of Steve Scalise's injuries. I'm certain of that. Probably keeping things pretty close to the vest at this point, but in the last 24 to 48 hours, I'm sure the initial focus is on repairing vital organs and all that to keep him alive. And if you realize that he's going to survive, then you move on to the additional surgeries of trying to repair broken bones and other things that didn't pose an immediate threat to his death at the moment he was brought in the hospital. And maybe that's what these additional surgeries have been, dealing with some of that. He's getting the best of the best care. But every prayer could certainly help. So